Hi, this is Kim. Welcome to the Bear Essence channel. Today's video is all about jointing teddy bears. So let's get started. These are the different types of joints I'm going to show you today. We have a straight joint used for the arms or the legs with a bolt and a lock nut. This one is a grub screw. This one's great if you want to use a bolt inside the head. Then we have another straight joint done with a T-shaped cotter pin. So it's got the flat T-pin. And there's another one done in a smaller size. And then this one is a wobble joint, so it pivots in all different directions rather than just being straight, like a head turning left to right or an arm going up and down. This one will pivot in all different directions. And these are the little fibreboard discs used for the mini bears. So that's another T-pin one. And then this is a little wobbly one. So these are all the different joints that I'll be showing you today. And in the next section of the video, you'll see the tools that we'll be using. The first tools we'll talk about are used for the lock nuts or bolts. And you have a spanner. I prefer a ratcheting spanner, but you can use a plain spanner as well. You need a Phillips head screwdriver, just a nice little stumpy one. And if you're going to use a grub screw, you use an Allen key. This one's only used if you're going to use a grub screw. All you need for the normal lock nuts and bolts is the spanner and the stumpy screwdriver. Then we move on to your cotter pin or T-pin joints, and you can use either pliers, big ones or smaller ones, depending on what size pins you're turning. And we've also got cotter pin turners. It's really important to choose a good quality set of pliers. You want a long nose tip, nice and fine, so you can get a nice tight curl on your cotter pins, same as the smaller ones. For your mini T-pins and cotter pins, you want that nice needle nose on them. So they're the tools that we will use today. I'm going to show you how to do a lock nut joint. So for each joint or leg, you'll need 2 wooden discs, 2 washers, a bolt and a lock nut. So take your bolt, pop it through the washer and through the disc. So this is the part that will go inside the arm or the leg. And then you'd make a hole with your awl, pop the joint into the arm or leg. And then from inside the body, you will thread on your other wooden disc, washer, and the lock nut. You'll see your lock nut has the rounded side at the top where you can see the blue coming through. And then you've got your flat side. Flat side goes towards the disc and the washer. Get it started with your fingers. And this is where your tools come in. I like to use stumpy Phillips head screwdriver and my ratcheting spanner. I'm right-handed, so I'll take the screwdriver in my left hand, pop it into the top of the bolt there, like so, and position my hand like that so that I can hold on to it comfortably. So that's just in the palm of my hand. I'll grab onto that with my fingers, pop the spanner on. When it's making the ratcheting noise, you're not doing any tightening. When it's quiet, that's when the tightening is happening. I'll just turn that over. So the beauty of the ratcheting spanner is you're not having to lift off every time. So I'll show you with the plain end. So you turn and then lift off. Turn, lift off. So it doesn't matter if you don't have a ratcheting spanner, it just makes your job easier. I'm going to flip it over and use the ratchet again because it's okay. I'll take that away. And you can see now that the lock nut is tight down on your washer. Using the nylock lock nuts is important because it's got that little locking in there, which will stop the joints from loosening over time. So as you can see here, on the inside of the arm, we've got the disc with the washer and the bolt. And inside the body, we've got the disc with the washer and the lock nut. And you can get that really, really tight using the bolts because the tools are doing all the work. I tend to use the bolts on bigger bears because you can get them much tighter, especially if you're wanting a bear to stand up, because the cotter pins are a little bit harder to get a really, really firm joint. So this is much stronger. So you want it really, really firm, otherwise the legs will flop and he won't stand up. So that's how you do a lock nut joint. Next, I'm going to show you a grub screw joint. A grub screw joint is really good if you are not comfortable doing a cotter pin joint for the head. The beauty of the grub screw is that you do all of the work on the inside of the body. So normally we would do a pin for the head because you'll pop that joint in and then you do all of the work on the inside by curling the pins. Using a grub screw means you can get a nice tight joint on your head while doing all the work on the inside of the body. So your grub screw has a plain end, a rounded end. It's a little bit hard to see in this video. And on the other end, you have a hole that an Allen key fits into. You can see that. So what we do, leave the Allen key in that end, and then we'll pop a lock nut on there. Get it started with your fingers. And once again, we're going to use the spanner. I'll start off with the ratchet spanner and show you how I do that. So all we're doing to start off with is fastening this lock nut to the end of your grub screw. So you can see here, you can just see the tip of the grub screw coming out of the end at the middle of the lock nut here. So I like to bring it down so you can see, definitely see the tip of it poking through, which you can see there. You can see the tip of the grub screw pointing out the top of the lock nut. So that's stuck on there, that won't come undone now. Next step is the same as the other jointing method. So we'll pop the washer on first, and then the wooden disc, and then you'll add your disc, your next washer, and your other lock nut. Tighten that on with your fingers. So now, rather than doing what we did before with the bolts, you don't need the Phillips head screwdriver to hold this end still. Everything works on the inside of the body. So I will pop my spanner on there. And then we grab our little Allen key, like so. So the Allen key is going to hold the grub screw still so that we can tighten this lock nut. Let's pop it down on the table there. I'm holding the grub screw still with the Allen key. Now I'm just going to use the spanner to tighten the lock nut. So all of this work can happen inside the body of your bear. So I'm still holding the grub screw still with the Allen key, and then I'm just using the spanner to bring that lock nut all the way down. Okay, so I'm coming up to my last turn. I'll just tighten that nicely. That's nice and firm there now. If you find you've gone too far, you can loosen it off. So with the ratcheting spanner, you just take it off, turn it over, and then it'll be undoing. I'll just show you how that's done. And it just loosens it off a little bit. So there you have your completed grub screw joint. This will either be inside the head or inside the arm or leg, and then this part goes down into the body, so you don't see any, or you don't get to feel any of that either. So we've got that one with the grub screw, and then we've got that one with your regular bolt. Next I'm going to show you is a straight joint with a T-pin. We use the T-pins when we're doing straight joints, and we use the rounded cotter pins when we're doing wobble joints. This is a wobble joint. So you've got two cotter pins joined at the head to create that real pivot wobbly joint, which is why it's called a wobble joint. And then you've got your straight joint, which is like this one. It's a much firmer joint, and we use a flat-headed T-pin. So that's your T-pin here, your flat head, and they're your rounded head cotter pins, and we use those for the wobble joint. So you take your T-pin, thread it through your washer, and then your disc, and that goes inside the head or the arm or the leg, and then inside the body you thread on your wooden disc and then your washer. So working from inside the body, we will use our pliers or cotter pin turner. You can use either. This is your cotter pin turner, and you'll actually lock that on to the end of your pin and start curling like so. And then you can continue curling down with the cotter pin turner. I prefer to use pliers, so I'm going to put the cotter pin turner down and I'm going to continue with my pliers. And what we want is to get a nice round curl that goes in on itself like a snail shell, if you can imagine that. Just keeps curling inside itself. We're just going to curl that nice and tight. You can see that that pin is just curled in on itself like a little snail. Okay, I'll switch over and do the other side. We're just getting hold of both thicknesses there and curling it down nice and tight. So once again, just curling on the inside of itself. We don't want it to hit this outer curve, otherwise it will stop tightening. You can see there we've got a nice joint. I can only just turn that. The curves are sitting down against the washer nicely. And there you have a nice straight joint. Next we'll move on to the wobble joint, like this. It'll give you a nice pivoting joint, so nice and floppy. So for that we'll need 2 wooden discs, 4 metal washers and 2 round-headed cotter pins. So we're going to take our 2 round-headed cotter pins and we'll thread 1 pin through the head of the other, creating that pivoting joint. Then we're going to grab a metal washer, a wooden disc, and another metal washer. For a wobble joint, we use a metal washer on either side of the disc, whereas with a straight joint, you only have the washer on the one side. Once we have this in place, I'll show you with the cotter pin turner. You just curl your pins down. Just turn that over so you can see. Curling. Okay, so we're just going to continue curling all the way down. I'm going to go in and get my pliers. Just finish that off. I prefer to use pliers as opposed to a cotter pin turner. I find I have more control. A lot of people prefer to use a cotter pin turner, so I recommend trying both and going with what works for you. So I'll show you again how I do it with the pliers. Just curl and then curl again. Depending on the length of your pin, you might have a double curl inside your snail shell, like that. You can give it a bit of a squeeze to straighten it out. As you can see inside there, I always manage to get a nicer curl when I use my pliers as opposed to using the cotter pin turner on that side. But you will find your own way and come up with the method that works best for you. So that's the first side of our wobble joint. That will go inside the head or inside the arm or leg. And then to go inside the body, we'll add the metal washer, wooden disc, and metal washer. And then we'll just go through the process and curl those again. So there we have a wobbly joint as opposed to the straight joint. So this will wobble left, right, up, down, every which way. And this will make the leg go forward or backwards or the head turn left and right, but it won't wobble all over the place. So it just depends what your pattern calls for or what you would prefer your teddy bear to do. Now I'll quickly show you the difference between using the fibreboard discs and the wooden discs. As we're using the fibreboard discs here, we don't need any metal washers. This is a really strong product, so your pin won't pull through. So this is a straight joint done with a little T-pin, as you can see there. And this is a wobbly joint, and that's done with the round-headed cotter pins. So now we're going to thread the T-pin through the disc, no washer needed, and then onto the other side. And then using my pliers, I'm just going to do the same as before, just curl the pins down. Go. And then we want that curl to be nice and tight up to the disc and curling in on itself, which you can see it's doing there. I'll just do the other side. and just give them a nice little tighten. And there you have a nice little T-pin straight joint, nice and firm. Now we'll go ahead and we'll do the wobble joint. Once again, I'll show you that. Wobble pivot. So we're going to thread one cotter pin through the head of the other. So the same as when we did it for the wooden discs, but this time we don't need the metal washer. Thread the disc onto one pin. Once again, curl over with pliers. I'm going to use my pliers because I feel like I have more control. So I'm just going to curl and curl all the way down to sit against the disc. You can see there, I've got my little curl. Now I'll do the other side. So that's one side of the joint done. Now we'll turn it over, we'll thread the other disc on and do the same again. And there we have our completed wobble joint done with the fibreboard discs, not needing any metal washers. Now to recap, I'll show you each of the joints separately and we'll pop a little diagram up. This is the locknut bolt joint. This is the grub screw. Straight joint with T-pin. A wobble joint. And then we have a midi straight joint with a T-pin, no metal washers, and a midi wobble joint. I hope you've enjoyed this video. You can visit the Bear Essence website for all of your bear making resources, links below. Thank you for watching. See you next time.